el olímpico, fueron el competidor favorito, amigos, para esta competencia cuando Mo Farah.
The math said 2075. The statisticians said not in our lifetime. But the grit of the Rift Valley had a different schedule. When Sebastian, Sawe and Yomif Kejelcha turned the final corner in London, they weren't just running for a gold medal. They were running against a century of doubt.
Absolutely incredible. I've never seen anything like that.
The time, 1 hour, 59 minutes, and
as they both dipped under that impossible 2-hour mark, they proved the math was wrong by half a century. The prediction died in London, buried under the pace of a Kenyan king and an Ethiopian warrior. Welcome to this special edition of Fields of Fame. I'm your host, the African Dissector, and today we are dissecting the greatest biological heist in history. We're going inside the lungs, the labs, the legendary dirt pads of Iten and Addis Ababa to answer this one question. How did they break the unbreakable?
History was made in London this weekend. Not one, but two distance runners breaking the 2-hour mark in a marathon for the first time ever. Take a look.
Under 2 hours. Nobody has ever done this. They said it couldn't be done. Sebastian Sawe is going to break the 2-hour mark. He's going to win the London Marathon in incredible style and historic.
To understand how we got here, we have to travel back to 1991. While the world was busy wearing neon windbreakers and watching VHS tapes, a scientist named Dr. Michael Joyner was at the Mayo Clinic playing God with a calculator. He published a paper that most people in the running world treated like a comedy script. You see, Joyner claimed that if you combined the perfect heart, the perfect lungs, and the perfect stride, a human could hit 1 hour, 57 minutes, and 58 seconds. At the time, the world record held by Ethiopia's Belaina Dinsamo was 2 hours, 6 minutes, and 50 seconds, suggesting a human could run 9 full minutes faster wasn't seen as science. In fact, the experts laughed because attempting to hold that pace for 42.2 kilometers wasn't considered an athletic goal. It was seen as a clear case of attempted suicide. But the 1991 study wasn't the only hurdle. In 2011, the statisticians returned with a new death sentence for the sub-2-hour dream. Researchers at the University of Essex performed a massive data crawl of every marathon run in history. Their conclusion? Evolution is a slow, painful crawl. Their math was clear. A human would not naturally cross the finish line of a 42.2 kilometer race in under 2 hours until the year 2075. Then came the philosopher, the man who looked at the spreadsheets, looked at the skeptics, and uttered 4 words that changed the world. No human is limited. In 2019, Eliud Kipchoge stood on a start line in Vienna and decided to commit a crime against mathematics. He wasn't just running a race, he was staging a heist against that 2075 prophecy. He was proving that the limit wasn't a biological fact, it was just a lack of imagination. When he crossed that line in 1 hour, 59 minutes and 40 seconds, he didn't just break the clock, he broke the scientists' hearts. Even though he had the laser-guided cars and a rotating army of pacers, the message was sent. The suicide pace of 1991 was survivable.
1:59:40, the unofficial time.
the first man to run a marathon in under 2 hours. One final...
Kipchoge proved that the sub-2 was no longer a hallucination, it was a target. He gave us the proof of concept, but he left one question hanging. Could someone do it in a real race? Kipchoge gave us the blueprint, but the critics still had their shield. They said, do it without the laser car, do it without the 41 paces, do it in a real race against the wind. They thought the 2075 prophecy was safe until October 2023, when a 23-year-old force of nature named Kelvin Kiptum stepped onto the Chicago pavement. Kiptum didn't just run, he hunted the clock. Where most humans hit the wall at kilometer 30, Kiptum did the impossible. He accelerated. He ran the second half of 42.2 kilometer race faster than the first. When he crossed the line in 2 hours, 0 minutes and 35 seconds, he didn't just break a world record. He officially put the 2075 prophecy in a coffin and nailed it shut. As the African dissector, I have to show you the gravity of this moment. Kiptum proved that the suicide pace of 1991 wasn't a lab experiment, it was a street reality. He brought us within 36 seconds of the barrier without any artificial help. He was a human glitch, a man so fast he made the world's most advanced calculators look like broken toys, until fate took the wheel.
A somber mood engulfed the home of marathon world record holder Kelvin Kiptum as the family came to terms with his sudden demise. The family reliving his last moments, saying he had several plans to uplift their lives, terming the death a big blow. As Chemutai Goin reports now, Kiptum's father called for speedy investigations into the accident that claimed his son's life, hinting to possibilities of foul play since 4 days.
His passing in 2024 left a hole in the heart of the Rift Valley. The world thought the no human is limited era had stalled. They thought the 159 was gone with him. But Kiptum didn't just leave us with a record, he left us with a spark. And in 2026, on the streets of London, that spark became a wildfire. April 26, 2026. Look at the scale of this. More than 59,000 people are on the streets of London today. It is the largest marathon in history. But as the clock ticks past the 1 hour and 40-minute mark, the race has vanished. The crowds are still cheering. The sun is shining on the Thames, but at the very front of the light field, something array is happening. If you look closely at the lead, you don't see a battle, you see a partnership. Sebastian Sawe and Yomif Kejelcha have left the world behind. They are running side by side, shoulder to shoulder, so close that their shadows are merged into one on the London tarmac. They aren't elbowing for position. They are locked in a rhythmic, high-speed trance. This is the moment the spreadsheets finally stopped working. The statisticians were looking for their 2075 calendar, but Sebastian Sawe and Yomif Kejelcha were looking at the finish line. While the statisticians were still convinced that no one alive today would see a sub-2-hour marathon in a real race, these two were just about to treat the most famous limit in sports history like a suggestion. As they turn towards the mall, the world realizes that the math is about to be murdered in broad daylight. As your African dissector, I need you to look at these splits. They hit the halfway mark at 1 hour and 29 seconds, slower than Kipchoge's lab run. The critics in the booths were whispering that the sub-2 was safe for another year. But then the heist began. Between kilometer 35 and 40, Sawe and Kejelcha, still side by side, clocked at 13 minutes 42 seconds. But how? How do you run faster at the end than at the beginning? The answer is a biological pact. You see, at 21.5 kilometers per hour, the wind isn't just a breeze, it's a wall. By running side by side and slightly staggered, these two were performing a double draft. They were sharing the air. When Kejelcha took the lead by just an inch, he broke the air molecules for Sawe, reducing Sawe's energy expenditure by nearly 10%. Then they would swap. It was a high-speed dance of survival. They knew that if they fought each other now, the wind would blow and swallow them both. They wouldn't just lose the race, they'd lose the heist. Without this pact, they would have hit the wall, their legs turning to lead, and they'd have struggled to even claw their way to a 1 hour, 59 minutes and 59 seconds. They'd be fighting for a single second of history while gasping for air. But by alternating the lead, they kept their heart rates 5 to 8 beats lower than if they were running solo. They weren't just racing, they were engineering a vacuum of speed. Think about the level of disrespect.
14-minute barrier to be broken. 9 seconds to go. 8, 7. Surely she's going to get there. It's going to be mighty.
The women's 5-kilometer world record, held by the legendary Beatrice Chebet,
13:58. The 14-minute barrier is gone. The world record of Gudam Segai, who collapsed.
Sebastian Sawe and Kejelcha, using this aerodynamic shield, decided to run at 13:42 because they refused to fight each other and focused on fighting the wind. They were outrunning a fresh world record at the end of a marathon. They weren't just settling for that 1:59.59 scrap of history. They were aiming for the throat of the clock. They were dragging the 2075 prophecy out into the street and burying it under the weight of their combined momentum. But every heist has a finale, and in the world of the elite, the brotherhood always has an expiration date. For 2 hours, they were a single unit, but as the towering gates of the palace appeared, the air changed. The partnership didn't just end, it dissolved. You could see it in the eyes. Kejelcha, the Ethiopian warrior, had given everything to the pact. Every ounce of his lead pulling energy was spent keeping the dream alive. But Sawe had been a shadow, a silent passenger waiting for the perfect moment to strike. At the 40-kilometer mark, the pact didn't just end, it was executed. The aerodynamic shield that had protected them for the last hour was dropped. The vacuum they had engineered together was suddenly filled with the cold, hard reality of the finish line. This is where the African heist turns into an African civil war. Sawe looked at the clock. He saw 1:53:30. He knew that if they stayed with Kejelcha, they would stroll into a 1:59:50. It would be history, yes, but it wouldn't be a massacre. Sawe didn't come to London for a handshake. He came to stand on the neck of the 2075 prophecy. Sawe surged. He didn't just pull away, he launched. He dropped a final 2.195 kilometer split of 5 minutes 51 seconds. To give you some context, that is a pace of 240 per kilometer. Most people couldn't maintain that for 400 meters on a fresh track, but Sawe was doing it with 40 kilometers of red dirt grit in his legs. As they hit the red tarmac of the mall, Sawe didn't just accelerate, He detached. He left Kejelcha in the wake of a speed that didn't belong in a marathon. The crowd wasn't just cheering for a win anymore. They were witnessing a biological murder. Every stride Sawe took was a nail in the coffin of that prophecy. He wasn't just running towards a tape. He was running away from every scientist who said his body should have shut down 10 kilometers ago. When he crossed that line in 1:59:30, he didn't just kill the sub-2. He officially buried the statisticians in the very dirt they said we couldn't run on. He proved that the only limit that exists is the one you agree to. Right behind him, look at Kejelcha. 11 seconds behind. In any other year, in any other reality, he would have been the greatest to ever do it. But on this day, he was the co-architect of the ruins of a 50-year prophecy. And if you still don't understand the level of violence they committed against the clock, I need you to step away from the finish line and look at the physics. Go to your gym, walk up to that treadmill and punch the max button. Most of these motors give up to 20 kilometers per hour. They scream, they vibrate, and they wait for you to fall off. But out here, in the wind and the grit, in the heat of the London streets, they were holding a pace of 21.9 kilometers per hour. They weren't just running. They were outperforming the very machines we built to test human limits. Think about it. If you're on a bicycle, pedaling at a steady commuter pace, these men would have overtaken you on foot. At the 40-kilometer mark, they were moving faster than you while you cycled to work. You're on wheels, they're on skin and bone. This isn't just a sport anymore. It's a biological glitch. The statisticians told us we'd have to wait until 2075. They said the human heart wasn't ready. They said the wind was too strong. But they forgot one thing. Data doesn't have a heartbeat. The math didn't account for the brotherhood of the rift or the hunger for the impossible. The heist is finished. The 2075 prophecy is buried under the red tarmac of the mall. The clock doesn't run the man runs the clock. I'm your host, the African Dissector, and this has been the greatest biological heist in history. Stay hungry. I'll see you in the next one.